So let's talk about a guy named Dave Rosenau. For years, he lived a life that sounds like something straight out of a movie. A master of deception, an elite undercover detective swimming in a world of danger. But then, one single, catastrophic event changed everything. It forced him to look at who he was and who he was really meant to be.
I mean, it's a huge question, right? One we've probably all asked ourselves at some point. For Dave, the answer didn't come from some grand plan. It came in a moment of sheer chaos, and it set him on a path that was way more demanding and ultimately way more rewarding than anything he could have possibly imagined. To really get a handle on where Dave ended up, we first have to dive into the world he came from. And believe me, it was a world of shadows, secrets, and incredibly high stakes. Yeah, on the streets, he wasn't Dave Rosenau. Everybody knew him as Viking. And he wasn't just good at his job, he was one of the best. They called him the closer, because that's exactly what he did. His specialty was getting deep inside drug networks, right to the very top, and then shutting them down completely.
But wow, that kind of success, it came at a huge cost. Living a double life was the job description, sure, but the real price was paid at home. He and his family could never, ever be seen in public together. A 2-year assignment, yeah, that stretched into 7 long, hard years. His wife was basically raising their daughter all by herself. You know, every double life has a breaking point. But for Viking, it wasn't a bullet that ended his career. It wasn't a blown cover. It was one single, violent moment that completely shattered his world and changed his entire direction. Okay, so picture this. It's New Year's Eve. He's actually supposed to be on a rare date night with his wife, but then the phone rings. Duty calls. Just one last quick meetup with an informant. He promised he'd be back in under an hour. And then, bam, total chaos. A flash of headlights, the screech of tires, and his undercover car is just obliterated. The call goes out over the radio, the one every cop dreads hearing about a colleague. Viking is down. In that instant, his mission, his career, his very life, it was all just hanging by a thread. He's trapped in the twisted metal, glass in his face, his lungs filling with fluid. He knew it was bad. He couldn't breathe. And in that moment of absolute total desperation, thinking these were his last breaths, he did the only thing he had left. He prayed. And this is the moment everything changes. He didn't see a bright light. He didn't hear any voices. Instead, right in the middle of the most violent moment of his life, this incredible, unexplainable peace just washed over him. It wasn't just being okay with dying. It was something much deeper. It was a sign that a profound shift had just taken place inside him. That near-death experience became his rebirth. It was the catalyst he needed to leave behind the only life he'd ever known. He was about to trade in his badge and his secret identity for a calling that absolutely no one saw coming, least of all, him. And look, this wasn't some snap decision where he woke up the next day a changed man. His transformation was a long haul. We're talking an 8-year journey. He left the police force, enrolled in seminary, and spent the better part of a decade preparing for this entirely new life in ministry. As you can imagine, his colleagues were stunned. His chief just couldn't wrap his head around it. He's like, "You're giving up your pension?" And even admitted, "I have never understood you." But at home, total, unwavering support. When Dave finally told his wife his plan, you know what she said? "I'll start packing tonight." Just incredible. Now, here's where the story gets really, really interesting. He didn't just walk away from his old life and all those skills he'd honed. Instead, he found this remarkable way to repurpose the very things that made him a legendary detective for his brand new mission. Think about it. He took the cold, hard, methodical process of a criminal investigation and he applied it directly to church outreach. He wasn't just going to be a pastor. He was going to be a spiritual detective. So his very first assignment is this church that's basically on life support, about to close its doors. He finds a dusty old shoebox filled with prospect cards from the last 7 years. And how does he approach it? Well, in his own words, he pretended he was working a homicide. Same intensity, same methodical approach. Okay, so this whole forensic outreach idea sounds pretty wild, right? A detective's playbook for saving a church. But the question is, did it actually work? Let's take a look at what happened when he took over a church that everyone else had already given up on.
Get this. For 12 years straight, the church's big outreach plan was this Christmas booth. They'd hand out cookies and give away coupons for a free Bible. You want to know how many Bibles they actually gave away in over a decade? You're looking at it. A big, fat 0. So Dave just scrapped that whole thing. His new strategy was so simple it was almost radical. He decided he would just stand in the church parking lot every single Sunday, rain or shine, and he would personally greet not just every person who came, but every single person who even drove by. He called it forensic outreach. Just like an investigation, he gathered intel. He learned names. He found out where people lived. And then he tracked them down for a home visit. But not to interrogate them, to listen, to make them feel seen, to make them feel like they mattered. And guess what? It worked. It absolutely worked. And this really became his core philosophy. His new work wasn't about fancy marketing or big programs. It was just about simple, personal, human connection. Showing up, listening, and inviting people back into the community one by one. When you really boil it down, Dave Rosenau's story is just incredible proof of this powerful idea. The skills that made him a great cop, that relentless attention to detail, the follow-up, the ability to connect with people on the fringes, were the exact same skills that made him an amazing pastor. He didn't erase his past. He redeemed it. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? Dave found his purpose by using the first half of his life as the foundation for his second half. It really makes you wonder, what skills from your past are just sitting there, waiting to be repurposed for your future?